Augie. Ollie. Hello and welcome back to Art Therapy with Jen. Today I have the final flip through of my Dark Dystopian themed magazine collage art journal, and this is the longer version of the flip through, so I'm going to be going through talking about each page, chatting and going on and talking about kind of what I was going through while I was making this and all that good stuff. So this is going to be the longer version. If you want one where I'm just flipping through and just having music in the background, I'll link that down below. I'll have that version as well. Or if you just want to see pictures of the pages, you can always go on my Instagram, Art Therapy with Jen, and I just post the pictures of the pages once they've been completed. But if you're in for some discussion, some longer chat, and just hanging out with me for a minute while we talk about this journal that I've worked on for almost this entire year. I think I started doing the pages in it in February, and then I started posting the videos weekly toward the end of July, I believe, or maybe toward the beginning, somewhere around in there, and they've been posting every week throughout the rest of the year. I cannot believe we made it. I don't think I missed a single week. Wow, learned a lot on this one, and just had a good time. I'm glad I did it. This is one of the biggest art journaling type projects that I was trying to think of the word, but undertook. Is that correct? I don't know. But anyway, again, if you want the short version, it'll be out there for you. But if you want to hang out, grab you a beverage or your favorite Dark Dystopian themed whatever, and we'll get into it. So let's start with the cover. Or actually, let me just show you how chunky it is. So this is the finished, and I'm pretty happy with it. I had thinned the book when I started. This was a composition notebook, in case you don't remember that from when we were talking about it. So this was a composition notebook, just plain old cheapo one. And I thinned the pages out and reinforced them because when I have the finished journal, I don't want this big huge thing. So I'm pretty happy with how thick this turned out. This originally, the cover was decorated a different way, and I had it sitting on my shelf for like a year, and then it was like, ooh, I'm going to do this Dark Dystopian journal. And if you look at the first few videos of the chapters, which, by the way, if you want to see any of the pages, more detail and just that single pages I'm doing it, I'll have that playlist, and you can watch the whole thing or just which ones you want to watch beginning to end. So this is packaging material that they wrap around like fragile stuff, like that netting that I glued it on there to an inch of its life, probably with Mod Podge. It's not very flexible, so it cracked over time, and you actually see the stitching of the notebook exposed. I like it. It kind of adds to it. These are little gear metal pieces that I blackened with ink a little bit, and then I just went to town painting and inking and a going on. I like the way that it looks. I don't know, looks like older and grungy and otherworldly, and you know, those are just things I like together. So let's get on into it. So one thing hello everyone, it is Editing Jen here. I'm just gonna jump in right quick and just talk about the theme we're going to be going over in this journal. And I just wanted to kind of set the tone before we crack open the journal and go through all the pages and the ramblings that will ensue. So probably make my upload a little late, so I do apologize. But I just wanted to kind of set it up. You know, now that I've finished the journal, I've flipped through several times. You know, I've filmed this flip through. I've gone back and rewatched it. I'm editing it right now. And I think I finally settled on the story that I interpreted as. Again, no right or wrong answers. I love hearing your all's different interpretations. But to me, I think I finally see it. So I wanted to set the tone for y'all before we get into the rest of the video. So to me, This is a story of obtaining power and wealth at any cost. I think this is a story of seeing people as means to an end. I think this is a story of using wonderful abilities and intelligence for all the wrong reasons. And it's also a story of healing and things toward the end. So how to start? So there's kind of this idea, and we hear it pretty often in society, that, you know, all the jobs are going to go away. You know, they're going to be workers are going to be replaced by machines and robots and etc. and so forth. And while I do agree, a lot of functions can be automated, most industries, or at least the ones I've worked in, you're never going to fully eliminate that, you know, flesh and blood human element. You need it. But I think in our story, perhaps, you know, we have our antagonist, and I think her predecessor, the one that she aligned herself with, probably had an idea, you know, for the maximum, you know, wealth, output, power, etc., you know, making money hand over fist. I think he had the idea of using robots, and then our antagonist comes in and she, you know, quote unquote, saves the day and sees that why should we build all these things? They're never going to replace. Why do we not take what we already have and shape it to what we need? So we take the human workers and we slowly shape them to be the quote-unquote robots that we need, you know, devoid of all those human qualities that aren't, you know, quote-unquote valuable to these wealthy, to the you know, people that are profiting from them. And that's kind of what I saw it as. And it comes back to this idea, and I talk about it more later in the video. When I was, gosh, probably 19 years old or so, I remember being in a business class in the city for the first time, you know, and I was in a class with, now I look back, you know, people from all these, you know, wealthy areas and stuff, and here I am, the opposite. You know, I was working, you know, Taco Bell at the time, you know, paying my stuff, and goodness, but anyway, and I remember being in this business course, and workers, you know, your labor, the people that work for you, you know, that have families and work very hard and etc., you're not supposed to view them as people. You know, they're just human capital on a sheet. You know, they're a labor asset. They're not people. You don't make your decisions based on them as people. You make them based on, you know, productivity, output, profit. And it's something that has just, you know, struck me to the core, and that chills my bones even today. And that's when I knew I really didn't want to be in the business world. But anyway, whole nother story, whole nother day. And I think our antagonist, we see this flower motif throughout that we'll explore later, that kind of represents those human qualities, those instincts that are not there, that aren't created by external influence. And she recognized that, and she has this uncanny ability, like wonderful, you know, something that nobody else could do. And she saw that ways what she could use to shape that and, you know, snuff it out, if you will. And she makes these workers that are akin to robots, you know, and it's done in a very intelligent way. Subtle manipulations, you know, we see like the factory, we see people being manipulated through products, all these subtle ways, these big events that are created to distract from what's happening. And we even see, you know, a revolution created where she inserts herself as the, you know, the person who saved everyone. So again, she's trustworthy. And while she's doing this under everyone's nose, because wouldn't that be, you know, like the evil, you know, overlord, corporate, etc. person's dream to be able to have workers who, you know, didn't have outside life that they cared about. You know, you could pay them the bare minimum. They didn't question things. They didn't question, you know, things that are being taken away. They didn't question that they aren't being fulfilled. They didn't question, you know, this kind of thought. And, you know, in our dystopian world, it's going to be taken even further. And on top of that, we also see, you know, your workers are getting paid, but then what if you could manipulate their behavior to the point where you can manipulate what they are buying, what they do. You can manipulate them to the point where they feel like they don't need any free time. You know, they can work those long hours. When they're out, they're going to buy the products that you tell them to buy. They're going to behave in the way they're supposed to behave. They're going to find things important that you manipulate them to feel that is important. And so they will buy the products because you've instilled that significance onto them. And so not only are they working and you're paying them a wage, but then they're taking all that money and giving it right back to you. So that's kind of the overall theme. We do have, you know, a few side stories in there, but it's kind of, you know, and then people that don't take to the subtle manipulation well, there are places they are sent to receive a stronger hand. You know, more strict and rigid conditioning, if you will. So that's kind of the theme where we're going to be exploring in here. We have our, like I said, antagonist that is a genius, plays the long game. And you know, I think of things, if you look through history, that these big corporations that have done that are horrendous to people without care. That's kind of where we're going here in the theme. What if you took someone on the top who, you know, people, they see people as output on a spreadsheet anyway, but what if you could take it to the point, you know, in this little microcosm of a dystopian world that we're exploring, and you can do it to the point where you truly can shape people, and you can put yourself into a position where you're able to manipulate it so much that people are no longer going to question. People are no longer, you know, and we see toward the end people that have gone through this. And I think if you've been in a position where you are just, you've given everything, you're mentally exhausted. And I think here over the past year, a lot of people have felt this way. And you finally see the other side, and people finally get out of this, you know, rat race, as you will, and see it for what it is, and have to recover and deprogram everything they've known, because to the point where it is so ingrained that it's in the actual patchwork of society, how you're supposed to be, and etc. And I'll just talk briefly a bit. You know, I talk about manipulating behavior. Another thing I took away when I was in business school from marketing: if you have a product that doesn't solve a problem, you have to create a problem that your product will solve. So that's just something to think about, food for thought. But I have rambled for almost 10 minutes I've added to this video, and I'm already late getting this uploaded. So editing Jen's going to sign off here, and we'll go back to flip through and chat Jenn. Okay. All right. One thing I haven't shown on the channel, and I actually just finished adding words to it this morning, so I don't even know if it's dry all the way, are the inner and outer covers. So we'll start with the outer cover. Just going to do separate videos. I was like, nah, we'll have those for the flip through. So we have the last bite, and then some trophies mark the end of a great story. Some are just the beginning. And we just have this page here. And then I really love this page because finishing it after the fact, I think it really sets the tone for this book. So we have, there is the sickening understanding that fires now exist in a different dimension. Turn up the heat. People will come from miles to watch you burn. And it was the summer of revolution. So I really like this one. And we have our blonde girl there. So we'll start with chapter 1. This was Resistance in Bloom. And it just really set the tone. And this was one of those I went back and forth so many times. I knew this girl was going to be the main character. Is she a good guy? Is she a bad guy? You know, what's going on there? So I really enjoyed making this one. And at this point, I wasn't even sure really what this journal was going to be. Like, just to tell y'all, I didn't even start out making this a dystopian journal, like when I was gathering all my images and everything. I thought it was going to be like cyberpunk, and then as it developed, I think I called it Dark Future, and then it became the dystopian journal. So they all just take their own personalities and develop as they will. So I really like this page, and I think it started the book off on a bright note there. And I didn't even know that I was going to be making stories with it, honestly, because this is the second only themed journal I've ever done. I had my witchy journal that I worked on for, gosh, probably close to 2 years, that I have some videos on. I'll put that playlist down below as well if you want to check that out. And it did have an overarching theme, but I didn't go into stories and like a narrative like I did with this one. So this is the first time I've really done that on a scale like this, and the second time I've ever had like a themed journal. So learned a lot on this one. And we have chapter 2, which is the factory. And this brought about that whole concept of this factory that, you know, people are kind of going into, and we're not sure what's going on in there. But think about a factory. You place raw goods in there or in pieces, and what comes out of the factory is not the same that it goes in. So talk about huge opportunity for the wealthy. It's just so neat to look back over these after you've finished and just see things. And there's no right or wrong answers, but I just love having the little thought exercises as you look over it. And then we have chapter 3. This is Silent Partners. And when I first did this, I thought these were the good guys, and I've kind of changed my mind. I don't think these are the good guys. I think they are pulling strings behind the scenes, but for nefarious reasons. So kind of public figures where people think they're doing good for them, but they're not. And even now I look, it says, I think what we're saying is we want to be in a different world. We care. Bag of tricks. The mastermind. It just paints a different color when your brain thinks a different way. I don't know. And I used a metallic paint on this one. I used a lot of different materials in here, just whatever strikes me. I don't like pigeonholing myself and saying, well, you can only do this, this, and this. Where I work, I have to deal with a lot of rules. And when I'm doing things like this that I do for fun and just like creative enrichment, I'm going to do what I want. So and then we have chapter 4, which is The Darkest Secret. So we're seeing more behind the scenes of some of these things, you know, that are going on below the surface that are more sinister and have definitely not so good motivations. So we're talking about losing yourself. The old prophecies of a ruined future are finally devolving into a deranged present. Now again, I used the metallic paint here. I was having fun with it. Okay, and then we have chapter 5, Rethink Perfect. How to change people's memories, how to do this. And honestly, the kind of the thoughts going through my head with this, like the future will be reinvented, rethink perfect, like I guess I'll get into it more in a moment, but it's kind of like you have people or a person and they know what they want. They have certain standards. etc. and so forth. And I think sometimes instead of leveling up to meet people's standards, or their idea of perfect, or their memories and the lessons that they've learned, and they form that perfect from that, what if you just change the goalpost and you kind of change their thinking and lower their expectations, and you distract them with all these creature comforts, and because this is dystopian, so it takes it to almost a hyperbolic level as far as like the fantasy goes. But what if you can reprogram them to miracle cure, think that they're cured, and they don't need to strive for these things anymore. Their energy can be redirected in a different direction for someone's benefit. So we have chapter 6, which is the garden. And at this time in the journal, and we kept seeing all these cold landscapes, these metallic colors, all these mentions. Even if we go back to chapter 1, which I'll just do real briefly, we see like all this destruction, and then this flower standing out, all these, like the fall foliage, where the greenery dies pretty much. And then here we see like this dome's full of flowers, and now it's empty, and she's looking sad, and it's, a wasteland. Welcome to the garden. How to get away with deception. So at the time I was making it, I was thinking, these flowers are kind of a resource that someone's come in and kind of manipulated them into giving up that resource or turning over ownership of it. I wasn't sure, but definitely something. The flowers are gone, and there needs to be a rebuilding and a lot of deception going on, and we are in dire need of mercy. So the color is on this one. This one, chapter 7, the dark process. And some of y'all picked up on some things I was going on in my life, and I didn't realize that I was channeling a lot of this through the journal. So we have, welcome to the robot era, the dark process, between levels of autonomy, rising crisis. And we see this man, and there's just this row of robots, and he's, sticking out. He's very scared about that. And I was trying to see what date that I posted this. Yep. So I was making this, right, I posted this, I think, sometime in September. And I was actually, at the time I made it a little bit before that, but I was actually going through a job transition. So I had been at a job for a couple years, and worked through the whole mess of, 20 and into 2021. I think I was there till the end of July. And I think a lot of us in different work places, especially if you were an essential worker, you kind of felt like you were a robot at that point. And I was just going through a lot of things. I had a lot of feelings. I felt like I wasn't being treated like a human being. I was just kind of numbers and output. The department I was in was so stressed and understaffed, with no aid in sight for months. I understand during the whole crisis time, rising crisis, that's something that's going to happen temporarily, but it prolonged the intense levels of, and this may just be a me thing, but I'm a grown person. I'm turning 36 here at the end of the year, and just having so much of every little minute movement and thing that you do tracked to the point where you are like a robot. You were logged off for X amount of minutes. You were this. Oh, well, you were logged off for longer than you usually are. And just, having to tell people when you have to get up and use the restroom, and when you're having to tell people this, you feel like a robot. And then it's that whole thought of just companies looking at reports and just looking at the, how do you say, because it's the one thing that turned me away when I went to business school years and years ago. I have a bachelor's degree in business, and you don't look at people working for you in a lot of these things as people. They're human capital. And that was a term that still chills me to the bone to this day. And you have people looking at spreadsheets, and you're just part of that statistic on a spreadsheet. And that's kind of what you felt like. And I felt like a lot of people during this time, I think that's probably why we had the big resignation, the veil fell down. You know, there was always this kind of understanding, and yeah, the veil got ripped off, and I was kind of going through a lot at this time, and I've had a really rough year, you know, health wise and everything, and there was just no understanding that, you know, I'm a human being, you know, I'm going through some things, and it never let up. So I mean, you know, I always say when I left, I had so much PTO banked up that I got thankfully I got paid for when I left, because I never got to take it. Because you were just expected to, you know, work longer hours, do this. So, and this is kind of that dystopian, you know, hyperbolic level. You're slowly putting these people through this dark process, because like we saw on the last page, people's memories are being altered. People's idea of what perfect to them is being altered, and it's all to lead to this. You want to get the maximum amount of output from from the human capital, you know, from the labor, because you're not a person, you're just, you know, an asset to a company, as you can. And to me, this is the robot era. This is the robot era. So sorry to go off on a little tangent, but I was going through that, and it was so just funny, interesting, because some of y'all in the comments picked up on that. Very like that. And I guess if you get it, you get it. Which, you know, on a nice note, I've been in a new job. Like, I don't know, I need to do a video. Maybe I'll do a harvest where I talk about it. But stuff just lined up in the way that things, I think, just don't naturally line up. And doors open for me that I had, that just make no sense. And I'm in a great job now. I've been there about 4 months, and they treat me like a person, and it has been amazing so far. So night and day. Night and day. But anyway, next chapter, so we're gonna go to chapter 8, and this is No One Has Heard from Her Since. So we have this, and this is one time I used, I challenge myself sometimes, y'all, and I used this scrapbooking cardstock for this marbling part, and just I had a bunch of these images that went together that just stood out to me. We have the factory again, the robot, and then this, what is that, a baker? I don't know, but we see Secrets of the Kingdom, The Lost Generation. It just, it's all about control, really. And now I'm looking back, we have her, and then we have this robot. Like, what does it mean? No one has heard from her since, because they're not the same. Like, you lose a lot of your humanity, and you become just someone, you become human capital. You become a means for profitability, and you become a means of, you know, you're providing labor and everything. And beyond that, you know, they want complacent robots, because things beyond that aren't adding to the profits, if that makes sense. So we have chapter 9. This is the fine print, and this is the idea of different ways. You know, you can think like this entity that is taking over this particular city, society, whatever works in your mind. we see a lot of times in these fantasy stories that people will just come in and just, you know, conquer places through destruction and fear and everything. But the smarter move, again, would be to do it in a deceptive way, in which people almost reach out to you, or people get so brainwashed to the point where they can't even see you as the person who is, or as the entity that is doing these things. They see you as providing them a wonderful service to help them, but in reality, you're sculpting them to how they need to be, if that makes sense. So I've put on here, we have Revise the Cult, have come to your senses, and she's in this glass box. And we have this lady here standing between all these molds of women in different colors. And they're secret subjects. So to me, this is almost like a retreat that they're going to. You know, you see these self-help retreats and everything. But this one is under the guise of, you know, we have the fine print. You're a secret subject. So everything appears picture perfect, but it's really just the start of that kind of reprogramming to make you that useful citizen that you need to be. And then on the next page here, we have Authority. And this paints the picture I was talking about of the, you know, fire, the destruction, all of this. This is that boogeyman that perhaps is, you know, portrayed publicly, or, you know, the thing that, whether it be like through social media or something, that people are taught to, this is the entity that is the fault for all this. This is the things that are happening, and it blinds people from, again, what's really going on. So we have this whole image, you know, the snake motif, and, you know, the fire, and, you know, people being kind of, you know, ripped apart, and people that are seeing what's going on versus people that aren't, or conflict being added in to just further put people in their own echo chambers, and anything that leads to people being against each other and worried about that, and this whole city can be burning down and collapsing, whether literally or figuratively, and just this pure hell, and people aren't even taking note, if that makes sense. So then we have chapter 11. This is A Little Madness. So again, we have this whole scene kind of going back to the factory and robots. What every girl should know. You can keep resisting it, but I'm on the right side. It's agony down to a science. And again, we see the robots. And now I almost think they may not be literal robots, but where you want to move people toward. Because at the end of the day, and this is just my opinion, you know, people are always going on about, they worry about machines taking jobs and stuff, but there are things you have to have flesh and blood people for in most industries. But anyway, I just think, because we have robots were always going to be a thing, and a machine is too perfect. So it's not going to be a machine per se, but we're going to have people that are about as good as, if that makes sense. So no masterpiece comes without a little madness. I would also say complete lack of conscience, the ultimate solution. Just very, very powerful page. And this was one I think a lot of people watching the series really responded powerfully to, because it resonated to people on different levels. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. That's one thing I find really interesting, because we all come from different perspectives and experiences, and, you know, people were drawing from different things through this. So And then on the next page, we go back to me, it's the same girl. Again, no right or wrong answers. And this is the Golden Ticket, chapter 12. And we get a little bit of the backstory of the girl that we've been meeting a couple times throughout the book. And we see her, she's someone who is playing the long game. Mysteries usually start with a woman. And I've made a lot of mistakes falling in love and regretted most of them, but never the freedom. So her golden ticket, the great escape. She saw an opportunity. To me, it's to align herself with someone very powerful. Play the long game, because I'm thinking she comes from somewhere where she doesn't have much and doesn't have much power, and she wants it all. Any way she can get it. You don't join the circus to live a really straight and narrow life. This is kind of when we start to see a little bit of what has really gone on. Alrighty, and then we have chapter 13. And this is Nobody is Listening. Again, this goes back to we had in the chapter where it said like the new cult. Just different methods of... Oh, we have the original cult. There you go. I didn't realize that tied in. But just different methods of starting to mold people, if you will. Again, we have this robot hand. And I honestly thought of like these are perhaps some type of supplement that's being pushed. Again, going back to like things that terrified me and got me out of business when I was in business school. We talked about like in marketing and making a product. If you have a product, like usually you want, if you have a, like what problem does your product solve? You know, your product is a solution to something, and that's going to create the demand for it. But if you have a product and you have no problem for it to solve, well, you have to create the problem. And we see this a lot, historically at least, in like beauty type stuff. And both men and women's products, you start doing marketing in a way that focuses on something to add insecurities to people, things that were never issues before. You know, this body part needs to be this size, you need to be this way, hair has to be like this. You know, for, you know, men, you have to have this much muscle, you have to have this, you have to have that, you have to be wearing this. And you create this problem, you know, and you put it out there in marketing, and you slowly manipulate people in that something that they never thought was an issue before, and they've perhaps lived their whole life just fine. Now they need to run out and buy a product to solve this, if that makes sense. So it's kind of where I was coming from that. I also looked at, you know, there's a lot of pyramid schemes based around products and everything that are really good at placing people in like echo chambers and getting them to buy certain products and things. And that's kind of what I see here. So we have this type of perhaps a beauty supplement or something that people are being told they have to take to solve a certain problem. That's why we have a new way to glow. Over 10,000 women tried it and love it. Y'all just see one of those type of infomercials or sponsored posts or something. But in reality, they're secret weapons, and they're slowly, again, molding people. Because we have this girl, I think she's tried it. And she says, I don't know when exactly, but at some point the noise turned to music. So that inner voice that's telling her, now wait a minute. Now wait a minute, there's something here. She just hears a beautiful music eventually. And I guess technically it did solve her issue, right? Then you have this girl over here, and she's terrified. Maybe she's noticing we have this robot hand again, the original cult. because people are slowly being brainwashed and nobody's listening. So maybe this girl sees somebody, maybe she sees this other girl here and how she's changing with these things, and she's telling people she's terrified and nobody's listening. So let's go on to the next chapter. Chapter 14, The Fortress. So I really like this one. I think it's the only one I used ink on. We have this like blood red ink. And I just love, I've had these images of these red circuit boards in my stash for ages. I was so happy to use them. And this is probably one of my favorite pages. And now I'm looking back. I think this may be a form of the factory, or maybe a video kind of like that, where maybe the citizens, the girls that don't take to the more gentle nudging approach to change, they're taken to the fortress because they need a little extra attention. So we have, it's time to transform. Do you feel it? Nobody will see you now. Almost in the way, I think maybe way back when you had a, woman that didn't act a certain way, or we see it with, boys as well, and they get sent away to these, horrid discipline schools and get sent away to the, just horrid places. Or if you're rich, to a boarding school, but these disciplinary schools, and they're horrendous, and people know they're horrendous, but you have these certain type of people that are in charge of them that somehow convince those sending their children, or the girls here in this case, that it's good for them because it's going to make them a certain type of individual. So just some food for thought. Like here we have the very thing that was celebrated was not protected. No right to rest, no right to eat, no right to say no. And we see this girl again in like the glass looking out. And she said, just when you thought you were out, she's locked in there, the vault. So food for thought. Then we have chapter 15. We have denial. And I think this is our blonde antagonist again. I don't know, should we give her a name? Y'all got a good name? Or maybe she's not an actual person at all, just an idea. I don't know, just throwing it out there. But I think we see her later in life kind of looking back. And she's just got just the tiniest sliver of consciousness kind of hitting her, but not enough. Because we see her here, she's dressed in white. And we have very similarly dressed these girls here. Almost identical hair, almost identical outfits, same makeup, cookie cutter all the way. Watch your garden grow, facing the music. Maybe she sees that this is not something that can be sustained a long time. I don't know. I found it really playful to walk on the knife edge. The thing is, we all have a darkness, And she's in denial probably of all the horrible things she's done. So perhaps something kind of like she saw something and it just kind of shocked her into reality for a moment. Have the reset gate. Perhaps there's some type of, you've seen a lot of groups. There's some type of moment where they make these people see themselves as a new person. Sometimes they even get new names and all this stuff. So just throwing some ideas out there, and also played around with highlighter on this one, which I thought was fun. It's not showing up too bright on the camera, but the yellow is still pretty bright. And then this one's one of my favorite pages as well. It's one of the simpler ones, but this is chapter 16, and it's Forget Everything. So again, we're diving in more of the world here and what happened behind it. This image, the city in the bubble, and forget everything you thought you knew, and behind every beautiful space is a master. So we just see this world here, and everybody in there is just in their own bubble, and they can't see what's going on. Sometimes I look back and I just think it's funny, some of the images that are used now that I know the source of them. Like this is from a grill ad. I don't know. I just think that's funny. This was part of a girl's dress from an image. Tires, that was from a car magazine. And we have chapter 17, which is in fragments. And this has been one of the most popular pages other than the first chapter. And it's probably, if not the most simple, one of the simpler ones. But I think the colors, the mood, I really like how it turned out. But then we start to see, you know, we've been seeing all this programming going on and the horrible things going on in this society behind the scenes too. You know, as it said, let's see, in chapter 2. Told y'all this would be a chatty one. We see it begins with a huge opportunity for the wealthy, which I think a lot of times, the more nefarious among the wealthy, again, us and the masses toward the bottom of the financial food chain, are human capital made to just produce profits, especially in a society like this. And on this side of it, we start to see that other side of it, because in bad times, there's also going to be, I think, what was it, a quote by, and I'm going to paraphrase Mr. Rogers, like in times of tragedy, his mother always told him to look for the people helping people. So there's always going to be those flickers of light in there. Sometimes they're hard to see, but this shows us they're there. And I think this girl here, she's kind of going through kind of a deprogramming, but that trauma still exists with her. We see here a feeling that lasts. The memories come to her in fragments. And war shows us the worst of humanity, but also shows us the best. And we see the shelter here, which is just this like really moody, dilapidated looking building. Looks like even the windows busted out, probably hiding in plain sight, helping people. So found this one interesting. One of the later pages, definitely one of the most popular. So then we get a big twist revealed. We have the this is the cover, chapter 18. And this is that whole idea I was talking about before. You have this entity or whoever that is put forth as the boogeyman, because we as people, we like to have very distinct good guy, bad guy, etc., so forth. So if we have someone that we can blame everything on, then it just makes it easier, doesn't it? The problem is you concentrate on this, you know, boogeyman, if you will, and you miss the actual bad actors that do this. But anyway, so we see here the cover, the long game. His world-saving idea worked in theory. So to me, this was the person, when we talked about in the golden ticket, that our antagonist latched onto for the long game. She saw her golden ticket. She, they got married or what have you. I think he was someone in power, and he probably had some ideas that he thought he was saving this world, you know, kind of by making everybody act in a certain way and all these other things, but perhaps he did it with more force, and it kind of put him in that, you know, bad light with the people, because it's very easy to sway public opinion. Very easy to do, especially nowadays with social media and all the information being collected about you. It's very easy to put people in echo chambers and influence them very easily. It's scary. Myself included. I've watched videos on things where someone's trying to influence you to buy something, and it's something I would never buy, and then I have to stop myself because I'm on there about to order it. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing? You don't need this crap. But this is a more, of course, nefarious thing of that. But we have the switch. I think at some point she saw the a better, probably even darker way to achieve what he wanted, and just achieve so much power and wealth while exploiting the people. We see this. There was a wish fulfillment, magical thinking. If I could be X, then I could have Y. And she could totally see the potential. So just super smart, using her smarts for not good reason, and pushing it on him. You know, he's the bad guy. I had no idea. It's all him. And that's the cover. Oh, I know you're in there. There we go. And then next, we have chapter 19, Learn from Them. And this was the chapter where I finally thought I saw what the flowers represented. As you see vanishing inside, she's holding that flower encased in ice in the box. And to me, the flower was that the voice inside us, or our, you know, natural instincts, or what have you, absent from all that external influence. Our common sense, our own personality, our own desires, etc., and so forth, that aren't manufactured by other things. You know, just who you are, listening to that voice inside, and like I said, the actual authentic self, you know, the authentic will that is absent of all that manipulation. And to me, I think we have this girl. I think she was someone who was in there and helped to further that manipulation. She was somebody who was in there doing all the things, you know, get a taste of the power, etc., working for our antagonist. We have the point of making mistakes after all, to learn from them, and something opened her eyes, and she saw perhaps this was not what was marketed toward her. It was something completely just terrible. And now she's, or maybe she got kicked out, I don't know. I've learned that failure is not permanent, but now she's helping on the other side to, you know, help preserve those flowers, if you will. And I'm just noticing something because I've been getting comments from the latest chapter that I put up. I just put up the second to last chapter, and I never noticed before until I had a comment talking about people being left out in the cold once they kind of escape this, you know, manipulation in the society. And I'm just seeing it everywhere now, and I had no idea. Like, here's all this ice. She's gotten out, and she's out in the cold, and then we have the flower encased in ice. I just found that interesting, and this image as well, with the stop sign with the flowers growing on it. Just something to think about. It's just neat when you look back through and stuff works out like that. Then we have chapter 20. This one was really fun how it came together. This is the vicious dream, and we get expanded more about the motivations, and we learn more about our antagonist. You know, this was the start, and again, it's putting that fear and manipulation into people, and I think she kind of positioned herself and separated herself from the, you know, the man who was purported as everything being his fault. And you know, she was just a victim of it as well, y'all. I mean, she had no idea, but she is this, she sees the start, and this is where she sees that opportunity to kind of break off and be even better. So people are looking to latch on to something positive. You know, the vicious dream, the fear factor, all this fear. You know, people, as much as they like to have someone to blame everything for, the natural inclination is also to have someone to latch onto that they think is going to solve their problems and come in and be that, you know, white knight, if you will. And we see here, when a victim speaks out, they get sent to a facility and drugged so that they shut up. So we start seeing more of the factory and the fortress, the vault. You know, that whole saying, the nail that's sticking out is going to get hammered down. So this is the start of it. And I like this image, and I haven't figured out kind of like, I kind of like, this is her thinking, and this is kind of that. It's almost Grim Reaper-esque, isn't it? Kind of, this is her outward appearance that people see and that they latch onto as this just positive, wonderful force. But this is truly almost like that dark energy at her back that people aren't seeing right there. Or I don't know. Y'all tell me. Maybe this is the true villain here. We'll see. We'll see. And just all the red and the fire and the destruction. And we have, you know, the boogeyman with the mask on there. And then we have chapter 21. Let's see. Yes. I have a little list here, y'all. Forgive me. Chapter 21 is Upright Citizen. Now we see her making her move. We have the press conference. We have her dressed in her trustworthy wear. You know, how people dress to look, you know, moral and upstanding and upright. Her quest, it was out of pure brain power. She is the upright citizen for the people. She is the protector and the advocate. And all the while we have this, this is probably some of the most haunting things to me in this book, because we have this like robot who just looks so wonderful, cute and cuddly. And he's holding this man, which I almost think is the same man from the robot page from chapter, was it 7? Oh, we see him here. I think it's the same illustrator. And here he is here. He's in fear here, but now we got this cute, cuddly little robot, and he's just happy in his arms. And we have no takes a lot more energy. It's just easier to say yes. So, again, concierge your life. We have that whole thing. Distract people with their comforts. Distract people, you know, have them move their idea of perfect. You know, embrace the cute little robot. You know, that's who our role model should be. And we need to do this because this woman here is going to save us. She is the upright citizen for the people. She's the good guy. She's going to take us through. And people don't know, for years she's just been planning to take this up because she can lower, you know, what have you, I don't know, safety standards, all kinds of standards, obtain things through means that anyone with a conscience would not, and just exponentially profit from it. Profit and power, all the while everyone just loves her because look, she's so trustworthy looking. And then next we have chapter 22, and this is Escape. And this is where we're kind of turning it around. So we see all the things we've learned, what has gone on, how we got there, how people are being manipulated without even realizing it, where the ultimate goal is. People are just being worked into the ground like they're robots. People are complacent. I think part of it is too, if you can get like all the women on board, then they can go and get their husbands on board, etc. and so forth. Just all these terrible things under the guise of coming out, you know, I don't know. Y'all get what I'm saying. But this is kind of, we see the flowers blooming again on her. And I think these are girls that are getting deprogrammed. You know, things just didn't set well with them and they left. And I had an awesome comment on this video, and they said it's almost like they chose to, they're out in the cold, but they feel better than they ever have because we have all these cold metallics. Again, we have the snow, these almost factory-like images where they're gone, and we have her smiling and these figurative flowers finally blooming again. She's living her best life up here. She's escaped. Speak the truth even if your voice shakes. I feel like there's people slowly leaving, but the citizens as a whole don't believe it. They're too into, as we saw, people being pitted against each other for certain issues that causes them to ignore what's actually going on. People becoming, you know, complacent and slowly being manipulated to think other ways, and even to the point I think they're manipulated against people that have decided to leave. And yeah, if y'all get what I'm saying. And then let's look at the last chapter, which is 23. So this one, it looks a little different. So for this one, what I like to do in some of my journals, I save the little bits that I rip off of the images as I'm working on them. And so the whole background is just made up with these little bits and images ripped off from other pages. So it's kind of all the chapters together to make up the background. We have the flower from chapter 1. And this is just showing, you know, there's hope. It's going to take a long time, but, and I had all these flower stickers from a book I have. So we just have all these girls, and then the flowers are slowly blooming again. And we will come out of this stronger together. I hope that being forced to stop will allow us to be kinder and more mindful so that nature can reclaim its rightful place at the center of our lives. The experiences that made them. I mean, when the rage fades and the protests end, heal. We have this whole thing. I think these are people, the flowers are slowly blooming and they're waking up and they're seeing that a lot of things that are going on, you know, are affecting everyone, and they're starting to be able to, you know, those flowers are growing, the outside noise is getting quieted, and they're starting to see, if that makes sense. And there's hope for that because we see these people from everywhere. They're slowly starting to see. And here's our same flower, the flower that our antagonist in chapter 1 used to create her future. That flower is also going to be used to kind of take her out of power, if you will. And then we'll end with the back page. I just finished this morning. These I work on just throughout the journal as I find things. I didn't have any plan for it or anything, but we have this girl in the robot fashion, you know. Again, probably some more of that advertising. We have the cute robot. Now we have these pretty models in robot gear, you know. And we have the uncertain future, and we're still learning exactly how it works. And we have the flowers growing on the red light. And then this powerful fashion image here says, people in power, the ones doing the crowning, generally believe that there is no one else qualified until they happen to decide to bestow the crown. Not the final chapter, and you knew. So maybe that leaves it open to revisit this world again someday. Maybe this is the same entity as that, where's she at? That Grim Reaper looking entity. Maybe she just, or maybe she just represents that greed. I don't know. Y'all tell me. But that is the end of my journal. Again, there is no right or wrong answers. That's just kind of my thoughts with it and the perspective I was coming through. I was very unhappy, like, at the job I was at, which was a bummer because I really liked that job for a while, but just the direction it took and the stress it caused me and everything. So I was going through a big job transition throughout the year. in the year I found out I had a lot of health problems, and I've never had to navigate like a bunch of prescriptions and, you know, having to ask off for more doctor's appointments than normal. I had plenty of time and gave plenty of notice, but working against that and feeling like you're not allowed to be human, if that makes sense. It's all about your output. It's all about that spreadsheet at the end of the week that shows how many things, or at the end of the month that shows how many things you referred and what your metrics you hit and all of this. And just things like that. I don't know. Had a lot of food for thought. We have robots. We have, you know, manipulation. We have a kind of twisted rags to riches story. I don't know, what's your all's favorite chapter, or what do y'all think about journaling and kind of telling a story along the lines? Does your mind change if you watch the whole series? I know for me, as more chapters came about, I would go back to older chapters and I would change my perspective, and it's just really interesting. I definitely have to try something like this again. I don't know when. It was so weird today. I finished those inner and outer covers, and then I put my words I had curated for this journal in my big word stash, and it kind of felt like the end of an era. And it was just fun to explore this type of theme. You know, I'm a fantasy sci-fi dork, so old school one. And these type of themes are fun to explore, especially taking like fashion magazines and, you know, predominantly, and doing things like this and just having that thought exercise. And yeah, I keep talking because I don't want it to end, y'all. I have this little journal, and I guess it's going to be with me for a very long time as I flip through it and get inspired. And who knows, maybe I'll pick it up in a few months and my mind will change about the story again. And it's great. And oh, that reminds me, I will put a song down in the description box. Mary had commented and sent me this song, and I'll send the YouTube video for it. It's called Empire by Beth Crowley, and I think she said it was written for Game of Thrones. But oh my gosh, she was so right. It fits our antagonist very well. And there's just in there, I've also yeah, I'll put that down below. I love it. Like, I listened to it this morning, it got me so like pumped for it. And it's just something I love seeing your all's comments and what you thought, and you just saw things that I didn't see and just changed my perspective on so many things. And just thank y'all so much. I really, really appreciate it. It's just been amazing. This has been an amazing experience. I learned so much that it is just crazy. I love seeing like what y'all think for the titles and you know, the quotes you were giving me, and it's been a wonderful interactive experience. I learned a lot. I went from struggling to upload 2 videos a month, and I made a commitment to upload 1 video a week. And I did it for most of this year with this journal, and didn't miss a week. So it was interesting. It was a good experience, and I'm glad I did it. And this journal did take me about 10 months to complete the pages, which is super fast for me. And I'm so glad I did it. I know it's not a theme for everyone, but for those y'all that enjoyed it, it just warmed my little heart. So thank y'all so much for watching. And I'm going to get to work gathering images. I think I have an idea for what my next theme journal is going to be. It's going to be pretty different from this one, a different direction. But it's going to take me a little bit to gather images. And I'm just not a fast journaler. I like to sit with things and contemplate things and go through things and just have a good old time with it, and let my noodle cook with the different stories coming along. So again, I know I've said it a million times, but thank y'all so much. I hope y'all like this flip through, and I will see y'all soon with another art video. Bye guys.